Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 10 tight end starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about only the tight end position, talking about matchups going into Week 10, and my top 12 tight end rankings on the week. Before we begin today's video, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, join the community, click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. And if you like today's video, don't forget to click that like button. I really do appreciate it. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, before we begin, let me remind all of you, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on Sundays. We will be doing a live stream for an hour and a half with updated rankings on the week. Top 12 tight ends, top 16 quarterbacks, 36 running backs, 36 wide receivers, talking about all that kind of stuff, talking about injuries, any pre-game weather conditions, all that kind of jazz. That's what we do on Sunday mornings here on the channel. So if you guys haven't yet already, check that out. Come on by, check that out. We'll talk about some fantasy football. Also, if you guys haven't yet already, Patreon link is down in the description. For those of you who don't know what the Patreon link is, it's a website. You go over there. By supporting me, you can get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered like I've done all season long. It's been very time consuming to do this channel, to do other things in my life. So answering all of your questions on YouTube it's impossible. So I decided we do the Patreon thing. So for those of you who have already been supporting, incredible. For those of you who would like to support, get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered, the link is down in the description. All right, let's talk about tight ends going into Week 10. While we just wait for this, what the heck? What are we doing? Let's adjust myself. There we go. All right, so now that we sit here, let's talk about some matchups at the tight end position. If you're looking for a couple pieces of news, we talked about that on the quarterback video, so go check that out if you haven't already. But we're here talking about tight ends, plain and simple. From the top, the Arizona Cardinals give up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. Not only do they give it up to the most points up to opposing quarterbacks, but to also the tight end position. This week, O.J. Howard will be taking on this team. Cameron Brate dropped a goose egg last week. O.J. Howard coming back from injury. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He's on today's list for a reason. There is no way I'm not at least mentioning a tight end that plays against the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals have not been good against the tight end all season long. It is no secret. At times, sure, they have had decent games against the tight end position. But if we just go back to last week, the tight end position for the 49ers, even when Kittle got hurt and left the game for a little bit, even the backup tight end made clutch plays. Had the game-winning catch at the end of the game for a first down. They had over 100 receiving yards from the tight end position and a receiving touchdown from Kittle. We've seen the tight end position, in terms of how many touchdowns they've given up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They've given up 9 touchdowns to opposing tight ends already this season. O.J. Howard, not a bad option. Moving on, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Same matchup. They play against each other. Arizona doesn't have a tight end, though. That's unfortunate. Maybe they have Charles Clay running around. Maybe it's, Williams. Is it Williams? I think it's Williams running around. I don't think that's going to happen, though. It's a little sketchy. I doubt that that's going to be something that they take advantage of. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the specific scenario that we have to live with. Moving on, the Oakland Raiders. Hunter Henry, going to have a big game. Should expect it. I do personally expect him to have a pretty big one. I expected TJ Hockenson to have a big game. He was decent last week. Expect him to be better, but Hunter Henry should be good this week. Moving on, the Chicago Bears taking on TJ Hockenson. Speak of him. Should have a good week himself. Moving on, the Seattle Seahawks against Kittle. Another great matchup. Greg Olsen playing against the Packers. Then we have the combination of Rudolph or Irv Smith against the Cowboys. We have Mike Gesicki, who's been playing very good, very much so a sleeper. Mike Gesicki playing against the Indianapolis Colts. Then we have the Steelers with Gerald Everett. And then we have, Trey Burton, who doesn't exist at the tight end position against the Lions. But those are some matchups just to kind of give you some perspective on how many points opposing teams give to the tight ends that they play against on a weekly basis in half-point PPR scoring formats, just so that we're all on the same page prior to going into my top 12 tight end ranking. Starting off with number 1, it's George Kittle, and it's not even close. Why wouldn't I have George Kittle as my number 1 tight end? George Kittle has been so consistent since the bye week and has been such a huge part of this offense. I cannot see a reality in which George Kittle is not getting the start from me as my number 1 tight end on the week. The guy has just been, besides being obviously, Emmanuel Sanders coming into this offense has been a pretty big contributor, but not only does it take pressure off of Kittle in terms of making plays, but it allows the coverage to kind of open up for Kittle. In the last couple weeks, 8 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets. The guy is getting an ample amount of targets. He's finding the end zone. He's finding big plays in terms of yardage. George Kittle playing against the Seattle defense should be fun for me. I think he's going to have a big week. He's my number 1. Moving on to number 2, Travis Kelce. I have Travis Kelce at my number 2 spot because I expect Patrick Mahomes to start this week. If in fact he does it, we will move Travis Kelce to number 7. Or we'll move him to 6 and we'll move up Hunter Henry 1 spot, okay? That's what we'll do. I expect Travis Kelce to be great this week. With the return of Patrick Mahomes, this offense should be good. He's been great without Patrick Mahomes, with Matt Moore at quarterback, so it only helps him with the return of a gunslinger like Patrick Mahomes. The offense is going to get an overall boost, and so will Kelce. He'll be my number 2 on the week, a guy that we expect to do a lot in fantasy football. Hopefully, he can continue to stay consistent and maybe even have bigger games, because we haven't seen him really have a big game in quite some time. So hopefully, if Mahomes returns this week with a healed up knee and a healed up ankle, which is very important, that should help him. All right, moving on to number 3, Austin Hooper. I think Austin Hooper is going to be fine. I mean, just looking at the amount of usage Austin Hooper gets in this offense, with Mohamed Sanu being traded, there's going to be less targets to fight for, even more receptions to be had for a guy like this who is so relied upon in this offense. Austin Hooper has been incredible, and against the Saints should be a higher scoring event between the two teams. Again, in the past, these two teams consistently have shootouts. Despite how good their defenses are, both of these offenses are far too talented to be shut down, and it's going to be a back and forth matchup, and I expect Austin Hooper to have another huge week as my number 3 tight end. Moving on to number 4, Darren Waller in tonight's matchup against the Chargers. I think this game is going to be pretty good. I think Darren Waller, Hunter Henry, both of them are going to be great tight ends. Both of them should get the start tonight in the Thursday night matchup against one another. Darren Waller, here's the thing about Darren Waller. At times, they do like to use other tight ends. We see, a couple other tight ends come into the formation, take a couple receptions away from Darren Waller. That's just a product of the system. Their system involves a lot of tight ends, and sometimes Darren Waller is heavily covered, and another, couple. I think Moreau comes in, catches a couple targets here and there, maybe scores a touchdown. That happens, but I expect Darren Waller to continue to be their top receiving target. Sometimes it's Hunter Renfrow, sometimes it's Tyrell Williams, but Darren Waller tonight, I expect him to do big things. He's my number 4 on the week. Moving on to number 5, Mark Andrews. Last time Mark Andrews played against the Cincinnati Bengals, 99-yard receiving, 8 receptions, or was it 7 or 8 receptions? Should have another good game. Similar to the last time they played against this team. Mark Andrews is the number 1 receiver on this offense. He got shut down last week, not by any surprise, because Bill Belichick does that to tight ends. He has taken away some of the best tight ends in the National Football League and made them absolutely irrelevant when they play against that defense. He's done it to Travis Kelce. So Mark Andrews was no surprise last week. I even mentioned it. There was always a possibility that Belichick targets that and gets rid of it. They surely did. They couldn't stop the run, but they took away Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is not going to be able to get shut down by the Cincinnati Bengals. That is not in the repertoire of that defense. They are not going to be able to, they're not capable of doing it in the first place. I expect Mark Andrews to have a big week here. He's my number 5 tight end on the week in a very, very favorable matchup. Should be easy for them against the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on to number 6, Hunter Henry. Now, I understand that the Oakland Raiders give up a lot of points. In fact, the 3rd most to opposing tight ends. I understand this. You don't have to tell me. We went over it in a little bit. Now, why do I have Hunter Henry at 6? Why do I have him below all these other tight ends in such a great matchup? I think there is so much. There's so many offensive weapons in this entire Chargers scheme. With Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler. There are so many guys that are capable of making plays within this offense. There's always a potential that in this said matchup we have a huge game, a comeback game from Keenan Allen, and we have Mike Williams with another consecutive 100-yard game. We could see that. I do expect Hunter Henry to have a good game, but to have him in that top 5 conversation, in that top 3 conversation, I would need a touchdown from the guy, or I would need huge yardage plays. Yes, he's been doing huge yardage plays in the last couple of weeks. But I'm a little worried. Maybe they don't use him as much. Maybe they use the wide receivers and they target them heavily. Maybe they run the ball heavily. This is a new offense. This is a new offensive coordinator. We're moving around. We're doing different things. I don't know what to expect. We've seen 1 week with this new offense. We've seen a lot of rushing attempts. We've seen a good amount of targets to Hunter Henry. That's for certain. But maybe we change something out. Just saying, Hunter Henry's going to be fantastic this week. But either way. We're splitting hairs here. Moving on. Number 7, Gerald Everett playing against Pittsburgh. Hasn't been great against the tight end position. Gerald Everett Sits at 7 because comparatively to the other tight ends that are available, he really is the best one. He has been good this season. And his rest of the season schedule, pretty fancy if you ask me. Going through the rest of the season here. Let's go find it, shall we? Where the heck is Gerald Everett on my list? All right, Mr. Everett, I got to look you up. Because I talked about this when I did the end of season, the rest of season rankings for positions in terms of schedule for the tight end position. When we look at their schedule, when you get to play against Arizona, Seattle, Dallas, San Francisco from weeks 13 through 16, that is really easy. I really do believe that is an easy slate for him. We've seen this guy be a 10-target receiver for this team, and then we've seen games in which he completely disappears because they don't need to use him. Against Pittsburgh, I do believe they're going to have to use him, and because of the absence of a guy like Brandon Cooks, Gerald Everett will step up and be another receiving threat for this team. He's my number 7 on the week. Moving on to number 8, Jared Cook. Jared Cook's back. He's healthy. Drew Brees is back. He's healthy. This offense gets to take on a very easy matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. I expect Drew Brees to target his tight end position like he usually does at a pretty good amount, and I expect Jared Cook to be good. This is a tight end that was incredible last year. Sure, it may have been a product of the Raiders system, but certainly the Saints have targeted the tight end position a lot in the last couple seasons, and Jared Cook should be in line for a pretty good week this week, potentially even a touchdown in a higher scoring event against the Falcons. He's my number 8. Moving on to number 9, Jason Witten. Sure, Blake Jarwin scored a touchdown. That's perfectly fine. But Jason Witten saw 9 targets, 8 receptions, and was a monster in a PPR format. Sure, we talk about tight end, and majority of my rankings are half PPR, and he still had a lot of value, was still a 10-point guy. This is a guy that is sneakily, just on a weekly basis, a consistent tight end, and he's getting it done. He is getting it done, touchdown or not. Jason Witten has been good, and that's why I have him at number 9. If he's going to see 9 targets, if it's going to be so easy for him to get the job done or to be that safety blanket for Dak Prescott like he was for Tony Romo a couple years back, Jason Witten is going to continue to be on said list. He was my number 12 last week. He gets a little bit of a boost this week considering what he's able to do in terms of targets and usage. So he's my number 9. Moving on to number 10, TJ Hockenson should be good this week. Again, he is the 3rd, maybe 4th receiving option on this team. Eventually we'll get to him, and he should have a decent week. TJ Hockenson eventually will hopefully get back to being a 10-point fantasy person. Outside of week 1, really hasn't done anything huge. Last week was a little bit of a baby step in the right direction, so hopefully we'll continue to see good baby steps, especially in a matchup like this against Chicago. They're going to have to throw the ball heavily. Hockenson can potentially take advantage of his size, a matchup that perhaps is a mismatch, and maybe score a touchdown in the red zone. Moving on to number 11, again, like I mentioned, there's no way I'm not starting a tight end against the Cardinals. O.J. Howard should be a great play. I understand he's missed a couple weeks. I understand he's gotten very limited use out of this team, and they don't really like to use the tight end position, but I'm jumping on the train. I'm ready to go with O.J. Howard. He's my number 11. Moving on to the last quarterback of the week, Greg Olsen playing against the Packers. I expect the Packers to win this game, but I don't expect the Panthers to just roll over and let it happen to them. I expect this team to come out, try to make plays. Kyle Allen is the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. It's going to be McCaffrey, sure, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, but Greg Olsen could be a very sneaky play this week. He should have been better last week. Doesn't get as many targets. Maybe he ends up being another one of these garbage plays. But in terms of all the remaining tight ends, there isn't much talent left. So Greg Olsen at this point in the matchup gets my nod. He's my number 12 on the week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, tight end videos are typically shorter because we're only talking about 12 guys, but I do appreciate you guys spending your time watching today's videos and all of my videos. So, again, thank you. Until next time, I will see you guys. I appreciate that. Again, don't forget, Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come join us, live stream, talking about football before kickoff. Thank you again, and until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.